G'day everybody, Ben Beattie here, your local solar expert, and today we're covering a question that is quite controversial, but it's one that a lot of people are really talking about and want to know the answer to. Now, it's quite a long question, so bear with me. I've got quite a bit to cover, and of course that question is, are batteries worth it? So the real question is not are batteries worth it, but are batteries worth it for you? You see, everybody has their own value equation, and what makes sense for one person not necessarily is what makes sense for you. So there's quite a few things that will go into your consideration to get batteries or not, and so we'll go through some of those today. I hope you enjoy it. Now, if I asked you, how much power do you use during the day? You'd have an answer. You might have an answer, you might not have an answer. A lot of people say to me, well, I don't use much power at all during the day. I don't use any power during the day. I'm at work. I don't use any power during the day. And of course, we've seen in our previous videos that there is always power running during the day, and that's why solar makes sense. The real question is, are you a user that we can modify that power for and bring that within our solar hours to make it make sense? Or is it too difficult for us to modify? And in that case, we need to look at some other options. So, the first thing to understand is that the cost of power is about 28 cents. So, any solar power that you generate yourself and use in your home is worth the cost of power. It's worth 28 cents a kilowatt hour to you. So if you're using 30 kilowatt hours a day, 30 kilowatt hours times 28 days times your billing period, 91 days for a quarter, that's going to be, what that's worth to you. So if you're not using a lot of power during the day and you're sending it back to the grid, in different places that'll be worth more or less to you, but in North Queensland where I am, it's worth about 8 cents. So you can see that if you're sending a whole lot of power back to the grid, it's going to be of less value to you than if you can use it in your home. So that's why we have, in our energy consultations, we really look at how you're using your power, what's using your power, how can we modify your load profile to match the solar production curve better to really get the best return on investment for you. But of course, the other way to use it, and this is the topic of the video, of course, is what about if instead of sending it back to the grid, we were to bank it? So we'll get rid of the feed-in tariff and we'll draw our trusty load profile again so we can talk about it. Okay, and we've got our solar production curve that we know so well, and let's say that we're a normal that you're a household with a two-humped profile like that, and we know from our other videos that that's about 30% daytime usage. Okay, so if you have that load profile and there's nothing we can do to modify it, then you're going to be sending 70% of that power, all of this power, back to the grid. And if you're lucky enough to get a feed-in tariff where you are, that could be worth 8 cents. So, how about instead of sending it back to the grid, we put it into our battery? Then that way, the power that you have banked during the day is worth the cost of power to you. It's worth 28 cents to you. So you can use it here, all through the night, and if you get it sized correctly, the right size battery system, even potentially into the morning until the solar takes over again. But even if it doesn't make it all night, let's say you run out of battery power here, you'll just buy that little bit of power back from the grid. So all in all though, you know, you have saved all of that amount of power by banking it during the day. So very good technology, very good strategy, makes sense for a lot of people. Whether it makes sense for you or not will be determined by many other factors. So one of those factors that we need to consider, and that you need to consider with your own personal value equation, is how long you're going to be in the house that you're in. If you are going to be moving out in 5 years' time, probably not. If this is your forever house, then in my opinion, now's the time to jump on and get batteries. So we've talked about the cost of power. We've talked about how that battery can store the power that's worth the cost of power to you. But what does that look like in a return on investment calculation? So we haven't yet done return on investment calculations in this video series, and I will go into it in a lot more detail, but for now what I want to do is just give you a quick comparison. So we'll draw our graph the other way, and this is time, and instead of power now we've got dollars. So you buy a solar system without a battery, and based on your usage profile, your load profile, you get a certain return on investment. We'll optimize that as best we can for you. But let's say you don't have a battery. What you can expect is that, so you're going to go into minus dollars here, minus dollars, okay, because you're going to purchase a system. You're prepaying your power up front. So you've purchased your system, your return on investment is below the line. It's cost you money so far. So this is year 1, and we'll call this year 10. Okay, so you bought a solar system. Congratulations. It's cost you money. We know that a residential solar power system is going to break even in about 4 to 5 years, something like that. So your return on investment line is going to increase because the cost of power increases, and it's going to continue up, not a very straight line, until it till it saves you X amount of dollars. Okay. Now, a battery system is more expensive because you've got a battery, you've invested in more hardware, okay? So it's going to cost you more down here. And so you look at your power bill and you're going, oh, can I really afford it? You know, are they really worth it? What's it going to do for me? Well, what we know is that in the same situation, that it's going to cost you a bit more. The return on investment is going to be slightly longer, but the savings over time are greater. And the reason for that is that if you've got a grid connect system here, you're always purchasing some power from the grid. You may do with a battery system too, but you're going to be purchasing all of your nighttime power from the grid. And what we know about the cost of power from the grid is that it's going up. And historically, the Australian Bureau of Statistics tells us that it's going up at about 10% per year. So that's something that you would factor in with any investment, and we factor it in with solar as well. So that's why this line gets slightly more. So your return on investment suffers because you might be buying 70% of your power from the grid, 30% is coming from your solar. Well, that 70% is increasing at 10% per year. So while it's still a good investment, it's still a good buy, it's not as good as your battery. Because with a battery system, you might be only buying 10% from the grid, or nothing, and 90% of your own power. So that's why, even though it costs you a little bit more to get started and it takes you a little bit longer, this break even here is about 6 to 7 years as opposed to 5 years. So still not too bad. You know, I think historically, statistically, I should say, people move house about every 7 years. So, you know, if you put a solar battery system on and you broke even in 67 years, and you turned around and moved, oh whoa, I've only just broken even, but you've got an asset on your property as well. So, you know, there's that to weigh up. So that's the return on investment consideration. Another consideration is the warranty. The question that I get asked a lot, you know, well, what's the warranty and how long are they going to last? So we're at about second, third gen battery systems now. So, you know, they've been popular for at least 2 to 3 years. We've been putting them out there in new generations of batteries, and most of your lithium batteries have a 10-year warranty. Okay, great. So if it breaks even in 6 to 7, you've still got some years up your sleeve. But the life expectancy, that's your warranty, but the life expectancy is more like 15 years. And they know that because they speed up the cycle testing and they do tests, of course. So does it make sense? The warranty, 10 years is pretty good, and if you get an inverter with a 10-year warranty, then you know that's well matched. It's going to pay for itself nearly twice over, and who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years. Power prices may increase more than 10%, and that way, you know, your return on investment will be greater because it'll pay for itself faster. Now, another consideration with batteries is what happens when the grid goes down. So I want to talk about two schemas. One is called self-use, and the other one, backup. So in Australia, the connection standards say that if an inverter doesn't have any power from the grid, it needs to shut down. So just about every inverter system out there, with some exceptions, pardon me, will shut down. So if you've got an inverter system with a battery, you can use your power at night. So you make it during the day, you use it at night, you use it all up, you flick back over to the grid. That's a grid connected battery system, and that's called self-use. And if the power goes down, the system shuts down, unless you've got an inverter with a backup circuit in there. So that's a bunch of relays and switches and intelligent control programs that say it's okay, we can bypass that rule because we can keep the grid safe. The rule comes about because we don't want poor linesmen out there working on the lines and you're pumping solar power back into the grid. That's dangerous. So you can choose a battery system with backup or without. Now, if you're somewhere on the fringe of the grid where the power goes out a lot, a backup system might make sense for you. It will cost a little bit more, but that might be one of your needs that is really important to you. If you're on the hospital grid, for example, your power never goes out, that might really mean nothing to you. And a self-use system might make more sense. You'll get a better return on investment, and you'll never really miss the backup circuit anyway. So that's another consideration when we're talking about batteries. Now, as far as the different types of inverters that will connect to batteries. I hear from a lot of people saying, I want to get a battery, Ben. Great, fantastic. Music to my ears. What inverter have you got? Oh, I've got XYZ inverter. Okay, great. Well, it's not battery ready. Oh, but the salesman told me it was battery ready. I understand that, but it's not. And this is the reason why. So, there are grid connect inverters. There are off-grid inverters. And there are hybrids. So, the salesman who's running around saying, yes, it's battery ready, okay, in a lot of cases has sold a grid connect inverter. It won't natively talk to a battery. There's no battery chargers, there's no battery management system, it won't natively connect to a battery. You put your battery alongside it and go, there's nowhere to plug it into. So you will need to buy another piece of hardware. Yes, it's battery ready, but you've got to buy another inverter. So, an off-grid inverter, it has all the switch gear, the battery management, the battery chargers, the controllers, everything built into it. It doesn't need to be connected to the grid. A lot of them can be connected to the grid or a backup generator or an alternative AC source, but they don't need the grid at all. They will talk to your battery, no problems. They won't run without the grid in most cases, so you need to have that battery. So then you've got the hybrid in the middle, and as you might guess, is that it is kind of like a grid connect and it's kind of like an off-grid. Why it's like a grid connect is that you can install it without batteries, no problem. So if you're thinking, well, I really do want batteries, but I can't really afford it right now, maybe in a year or two. Okay, no problems. Hybrids for you. What you get is you get an inverter that's got all the switch gear in it, it's got the battery chargers, and when you want to add a battery, it'll just talk to it straight away, no problems. Nothing else to add, good to go. You don't need to spend extra money on another inverter, and in a lot of cases, having to do this it's a third-party solution. You know, a lot of these grid connect inverters, especially the cheaper ones, you know, there's no native communication here. It's an ad hoc solution. The nice thing about a hybrid is that it's a DC coupled solution. Everything happens in DC, so you get greater efficiency. So more of your power that you've saved is available to use. Now, there is a caveat to this, and that is that you can get a hybrid without the battery charger in it. So, I'll just make myself a little bit of space here. You buy your inverter, put it on the wall, you start making power. Excellent. But you've bought a hybrid. Then, in 2 years' time, you want to add a battery, you just get the battery charger and put it on here. And then it'll talk to your battery. But Ben, hang on a second, isn't that the same as this? Well, not really. The main reason it's not the same as that is that just adding that battery charger is probably a half, third, quarter of the price of putting on a big battery inverter here. And also, this is native. It talks to the inverter. The battery charger is built to go with the inverter. Everything happens in DC again. You don't have to do an AC coupled system, which, while in some situations they do work and they can work well, they do add up to a bit of money to make them do the same thing that a DC system does for a lot less money. So, if you're going to buy a battery ready system, take home message, get a hybrid. Now, another question and I hear it all the time, and I guess it is, it's real, it's relevant, yeah, it's important, is are they going to get cheaper? I don't have a crystal ball. I suspect yes, everything is going to get cheaper. To a point, solar's got to that stage where it's kind of, you know, it's about as cheap as it can get. Batteries, they're still probably on the way down, but what I can tell you is that they are already much cheaper than they used to be. And this is why. So, if you bought a computer 3 years ago, just for example, it cost you $3,000. You bought top of the line, or good quality computer, cost you $3,000. It's at the end of its life. You go back to the shop 3 years later and you say, I need another computer. I understand they've gotten cheaper, and the guy goes, yep, here's another $3,000 computer. Has it gotten any cheaper? No, it hasn't. But what you get for your money is way more. And it's the same with batteries. So over the last few years, we haven't seen the cost of batteries really come down too much, but what we have seen is the size increase. So we started off selling 3.3 kilowatt lithium cells. And then a year or so later, they went, great, we've upgraded 6.4. Same cost. You see where I'm going with this. Then 10 kilowatt hours. Same cost. Now we're talking, 13 to 16 is more common as well. Cost really hasn't changed too much, but what you get for your money has changed. So, have they gotten any cheaper? Not really. But your return on investment has gotten stronger because you can save more of your power, and ultimately that's going to save you more over time. Now, one of the clever things that we can do with batteries, apart from the obvious of backup power, using your solar power at night, that kind of thing, is that we can use it to game the system a little bit, if you will. And this is completely legit, and Ergon or Energex offer it as an option, and then it's up to the customer to work out whether that's the best option for you. And that's where I can help. So it's called time of use. So your normal tariff, and on Ergon it's tariff 11, costs you 28 cents a kilowatt hour all the time. You can get your off-peak tariffs. You've got your tariff 31, which is your night. You've got your tariff 33, which is your controlled loads. And they're getting more expensive as time goes on. They're not as cheap as they used to be. But then you've got time of use, tariff 12. Now tariff 12 it's a little bit special, but it will work in some situations. And while they'll be updating the rules around what you can do with it and when, the basic premise is that the grid wants to protect itself. The power companies want to protect the grid from those times when it's under a lot of stress. So if we're having a heat wave and everybody in Queensland turns their air conditioners on, the power companies want to be able to say, okay, well, hang on a second, we're gonna turn that off. And to a certain extent, that's what the controlled loads do. That's what they're for. But tariff 12 is a little bit different to that, because what you do is you get a different rate depending on the time. So you might have your daytime power and it might only cost you 12 cents a kilowatt hour. But then your shoulder period, so that peak when everybody's getting home, everybody's turning everything on, lights and using lots of power, cooking dinner, all of that kind of thing, the grid gets under a lot of stress. that shoulder period there, that's when they're not going to turn the power off on you. They're just going to charge you something ridiculous like 57 cents or more. And so where the opportunity is for you as a solar customer with a battery is that during that shoulder period, you don't have to pay 57 cents because you're using your battery. But then through the rest of the night, as your battery runs out, you go back to the normal rate of 12 cents. And any other time of day, if you use more power than what your solar can generate, you're on that very low rate. So by having a battery, you've got the ability to access that tariff 12, and there'll be newer time of use tariffs coming along. They'll be changing all the time as the power companies are a business. They're trying to make money. I'm out there selling solar. It makes it harder on them because ultimately they're getting less money back. So they're gonna make it harder and harder. They're going to keep changing this. They're going to keep increasing the cost of power. And that's where my job is so important, is that giving people the right advice, staying up to date with what's current, what makes sense for solar owners, and because solar owners don't just buy solar power once. They move house, they buy it again, they get an upgrade, they get a battery. So having the right advice is very important. So look, to wrap it up, in my opinion, the question is not, do batteries make sense? The question is, do batteries make sense for you now or later? That's the question. So, look, I look forward to meeting with you and doing an energy consultation and helping you to answer some of these questions. As always, my contact details are below. Get in touch, book a time in my calendar, and I can help you to save more money with solar. Thanks very much.